Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Trauma and Friends We Made Along the Way podcast. This podcast is going to focus on a series of events that caused a group of women, who otherwise would have never met each other, into joining a cult. This cult involved scams, makeup, and murder. Each episode, we will have a different guest that will come on and discuss their individual experiences within this organization. We will also be discussing themes of trauma and emotional abuse. So please, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Trauma and Friends We Made Along the Way podcast. I am Persephone, and I'm here with my co-host, Jess, as well as our guests today, Casey and Lindsay. Today, we're going to be talking about the power of friendship, and I'll have Jess introduce that to us here in a minute. But I first want to go over our thanks to everyone who's listened to the first episode. We have been listened to or downloaded 143 times. I just checked today. We've been downloaded, of course, in the United States, but also Canada, France, and Singapore, surprisingly, which I thought was interesting. A lot of people listening to us on Spotify. YouTube has also been a major source of our viewers, both the visual and the audio version of this. So thanks to everybody. Thanks to those who have sent us some questions or shared some of their own stories. That actually triggered my memory on several things that we've even forgotten because there's so much information. So thanks to everybody. And if you ever have any of that or something comes to your mind or there's a screenshot, please feel free to share it with us. Our link tree is kind of everywhere, and I'll be continuing to post that on our socials. So you can always email us or send it to us on one of our DMs. So thanks to everybody. I'm going to pass it over to Jess now.
I'm going to echo that. Again, thank you all for listening. It is massive. And we're really just trying to put out there that awareness of what's going on, how it can happen, and the escalation that one day you'll wake up and go, oh, how did I get here? Because a lot of us did that at the end of the day. Thank you, Persephone, for not only bringing us all together, but for all the work that you've put into this.
Thank you.
So, Lindsay and Casey are here because we are going to talk about how we all got here, why they joined, what brought them here, and what they take away from this. What is something massive in their life that is mirrored now, like things that they look back on and are wild and crazy, but are also heartwarming and exciting, and like how you can take some of the really good from this, even though at the end of the day, as shocking and scary as it is, there's still good to be had here. So I'm not sure which one of you ladies wants to start, but please tell us who you are and what brought you here.
Okay, I'll go ahead and go, I guess. I'm Lindsay, and what brought me here was similar actually to something that was already said. E had a fandom jewelry box, and I loved that box. I thought it was great jewelry. I was big into jewelry, big into nerd things. And I saw on Facebook that there was a group where you could get spoilers of what the next theme would be. So I joined that group. E was in that group, and she kind of took advice and opinions. Plus, it was just a general fandom thing. And I just loved chatting and connecting with those people and just getting a chance to be a nerd online with things I love. Because at that point in time, there wasn't as much nerd culture out there unless you went to a convention or something like that. Even places like Hot Topic didn't have tons of stuff yet. So it was just a really neat place to go. And then when she said she was going to make this other group with her sisters, of course I jumped on that, and I invited some of my real life friends, and just really liked being in that group and getting the chance to interact with fellow nerds and fellow fans and things like that. It just I don't know. I loved signing in and just seeing what was going on, whether it was in the background or the foreground. That was why I joined the group in the first place. Just get to be a nerd with a bunch of other nerds and fans out there.
Excellent. Yeah. So I think that's something that we could all kind of resonate with, especially when joining this stuff. What about you, Casey?
I mean, honestly, so my path was pretty similar. So I was actually added to a buy sell trade group by a coworker of mine back in May of 2015. And then I got added to the big group in June of 2016. I don't remember joining it. It just popped up on my feed one day. Um, but was added to that group and then like slowly became more and more active in that group. And one of the reason I got really, really active in it was in end of 2017, I actually moved halfway across the country. And there were a couple of girls in the group that lived near where I was moving. So I got really involved in with them because I was moving to somewhere. We have no family where we live now. We didn't know anybody where we were moving. We were moving for work. Um, so that's how I got like really, really involved in it because it helped me kind of have some comfort and made me some in real life friends here where I live now.
That's awesome. I mean, especially when you can
Yeah.
take it offline like that.
Yeah. And I'm still friends with them. I still see them. So,
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's massive. And I think that that's, again, another like representation of some of the good that can really come of this is that when you build a community that is very strong, it stays. And I think
mhm.
that's one of the best things that we can take from this is that at the end of the day, a lot of negative stuff happened, but there was a really strong community that was built.
Well, thank you both for sharing that. I know it's kind of hard to give a brief description of something that is such a long and confusing situation, where, again, so many things happen that it's easy to forget a bunch of it. I had someone message me like, I forgot there was even a murder. And I was like, yeah, there was. So, that was my
I
favorite
do
message.
forget that until it comes up every like couple of years.
I actually had somebody watching that on Dateline the other day. A friend of mine who's not associated with this, he's like, "I'm watching this show on Dateline, and it's about these reptile things." And I was like, "Oh my god!" Just so let me explain to you. And he was like, "I had no idea." And it was very funny, but again, thank you for sharing that. So, what were some of the things that were really exciting about the group for you? Like, what were some of your favorite moments that kept you in, like, and some people might say like the Tri-Wizard Cup thing we did or other charity things and different things. What were some of your all's favorites?
Okay. I've got a couple. The Wizard Cup, definitely. It brought out also my creative side. So not only am I a fangirl, but I love making stuff. I like doing challenges. I had a blast. One of my favorite things was creating that Gryffindor theme song to Cell Block Tango. I loved writing that. I loved coordinating it, putting it together, and just doing lots of the challenges. And along the lines of the challenges, even unrelated to the House Cup, we did things like happiness boxes
Mm-hmm.
and sent them to people who were going through a hard time. And it felt really good to be a part of that and also get to pour my creativity into things like that. Like I remember we tried to make ours almost like joke boxes. And it was just fun to do those things and get to just be a little weird, a little fun, a little out there, crazy challenges. But also, like was brought up, meeting people from this group in real life. I did invite some of my real life friends, but then I went to several of the meetups, particularly the ones in Orlando where we went to Universal and Halloween Horror Nights. And some of those people, we still see each other and still are friends, not just online, but now in real life also. And those were just, it was really cool to meet all these people that you've been talking to forever online and interacting with. And getting to finally meet them in real life and hang out with them, all of that was just so much fun for me. I had a blast doing those things, meeting those people. And so kind of like those things sort of tied together are really my favorite memories from being in the group.
How about you?
I think for me, a lot of it, so I didn't get quite as I was working two full-time jobs like when all the house cups and stuff like that were coming up. So I really enjoyed watching all of that stuff. Like I really enjoyed watching everybody else get to be like super creative. But for me, like a lot of it was the smaller individual relationships that I made with people that really like got me through a lot of difficult times in my life and transitional times in my life. um those were probably some of my like favorite things about the group was just meeting other kind of weird, don't feel like we belong, nerdy girls, and you know and kind of getting to feel that sense of community that I didn't feel in other aspects of my life.
Yeah, I think
It
building.
makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Jess.
No, I was just gonna say saying that like I think that community was so important, and I think that that transition, like, I mean, this was over a long period of time, so I think a lot of people went through a lot in their personal lives, and I think having that support online in that group was monumental. It could also be devastating at sometimes, because some people definitely ran through some of the harder stuff, and they got dealt some pretty rough stuff through the group. But I also think that it's that sweet and that sour aspect of things, is that there's also always the good stuff that comes out. And yeah, I mean, what was the sourest bit for you guys?
Well, I received webmails and things when the PayPal scam started happening from E. Never fell for that, but for years I had been getting different boxes and products and things like that from the sisters. And so I never really ever thought that I just would stop receiving the things that I paid for. So I did end up being out like $500 near in the end from different things I purchased but never received. And I remember holding out hope for a long time, like they've always fallen, even when it's taken a long time, they'd always follow through with what we were going to get. So of course, being out that money and seeing other people, but honestly, just the collapse of the community, because I really did love that place. And more than angry, I think, at the scam and everything, I'm sad because it's not what it used to be. Yes, it still kind of exists, but more people just talk on their own. It's not like this whole big group anymore. And I loved that community. And so it makes me sad that it's gone now, that I don't have that place anymore on the internet. And I haven't found a place that's the same since. So yeah, that's what makes me the most sour or sad, is that they basically destroyed something that was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And how about you, for you,
Yeah,
Casey?
I agree. Definitely the destruction of that like really great and positive place. And I unfortunately did fall for a PayPal scam, and it was even more bitter for me after the fact, because of some stuff that was going on in my personal life that I had been sharing with the group that made me all the more, I guess, flabbergasted when it came out what E was doing. So I was going through a period, I was pregnant with my son, and we were going through some genetic testing and stuff like that because some scans had come back abnormal. And so I am getting these messages from E about, oh, the PayPal thing didn't come through. And I remember like specifically I had ordered this custom Starbucks cup, and I was, we were going through a period of time where we didn't know if I was going to have my son. And during that time, and I had been posting in the group, kind of talking about what I was going through and all that stuff, because there were some other people in the group who had gone through some similar things and who had children with congenital abnormalities and defects and things like that. And to be getting these private messages about, hey, something happened with the PayPal and I need this money to keep the lights on or whatever. When it came out that she was doing that, also seeing and commenting on the posts that I was making, um, where I didn't know if we were going to have my son, that made me so angry. Like, I was so angry about that. And like, spoiler, he's fine. He's great. He's 3. He's a terror. But like, knowing that she was seeing that I was going through that at the time and still had the like absolute audacity to do that, at the same time commenting on my stuff, like, wishing, like, sending positive stuff for every scan that we were going to, and all of the tests and my amniocentesis and all that was an extra, I think, blow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing, she did that to a lot of people who were going through things. Because I was doing the divorce stuff when she was doing that with me.
Yeah.
And, like that, these are very traumatic things people are going through. You're dealing with a pregnancy concern that's very concerning. I'm dealing with trying to divorce someone who, we really were not getting along, and a lot of things are getting really bad. And, I was depressed and all these different things. And she saw these things, she was commenting, she knew about it, and yet still sent these scamming messages and was like doing all this stuff on PayPal. And and I also had the custom Starbucks cup where I don't know if I mentioned it in the last podcast episode, but her excuse, the reason none of us got them, is her cat knocked all the blank ones off the counter and they shattered. And that's why
I
we didn't get
didn't
it. I
see
have that
that.
screenshot. She sent that to me in a private message because it's like, hey, I actually have 2. And she's like, oh, I had just bought the blank cups and my cat knocked them all on the floor and broke them. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I'll send you some money so you can go get a new one. But then she never just got back with me about it. So, I don't know if I'm the only one she told that to, but I just thought it was so funny because I'm like, really? Like, how many cups did this cat knock over? Like, mine is a terror, but
How
that seems
big
like a
was the
lot.
cat?
Right? Are we talking like Garfield sized, or what is happening? But I just, that was one of my moments where I'm just sitting there and I'm like, look, I might not be the brightest bulb in the box all the time, but I'm not that stupid. Okay. Like, I have a college degree. Okay. I know this cat didn't knock like 30 cups off the counter in a weird fit of rage. I don't know. But, just again, the fact that she knew all of us were having these experiences, and they didn't care. They did not care. Yet when they had issues, we had to care about them. And
Yep.
that's the biggest problem, is that when they had issues, we had to bend over backwards for them. When and they were lying, like these kids had their each own VR headset. They couldn't share one. They each had to have their own that they never even really used. And I'm like, you could have sold those, like go to the pawn shop or something, put them on Facebook Marketplace, sold them legitimately, got your money back, and then you could have paid for your lights. But instead, it's, oh, I'm going to do these scamming things and hurt the people who had been supporting them for years and years in legitimate businesses.
Yeah.
Because the boxes and the makeup were legitimate businesses, and we were their biggest people. We were sharing them on socials. We were doing all sorts of stuff. We're buying the products, and yet they were trying to bleed us dry. It's pretty painful.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
my dealings was more of them, and I was blatantly asked for a picture of my driver's license so that money could be taken out of a Canadian casino. And I remember sitting back and going, wait a second, that's not how that works. Like, at the time, I was, again, also going through a lot of hard stuff in my personal life, but whatever was going on in theirs was more important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the hard bit, is that a true friend they might be also going through some hard stuff, but they'll take 5 minutes and they'll go, man, that sucks. But they're not going to then turn around and go, oh, but I need this from you.
It's one of the, especially the level of severity some of these things were. It's one thing to just have a bad day, but it's another thing when you're dealing with life or death, or just these major stressors. Like, my hair was falling out during this time. Like, I had picked up long COVID during this and had been in the hospital, and she knew that. And I'm dealing with all this. They weren't sure something was really wrong with my heart. It was kind of, everything was still new, and I had like collapsed on the stairs, and she's doing a PayPal scam like the very next week. The level of just complete narcissism. And I hate being like an armchair psychologist, like diagnosing people, but I don't know what else to call it when it's that level of selfishness.
It's callousness. It's disgusting, and it's disappointing at the end of the day, because these are people that, again, have been pillars of a community, that have been a very supportive community and a very good community, and then here we are.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people's lives got destroyed and ruined and hurt to the point where trust is it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you come back from that?
So, kind of a question that just sort of popped in my mind. Was there a specific triplet that kind of drew you in? Like, were you connected with a particular one that kind of drew you in with that connection and friendship, and then you kind of branched out? Or was it just the overall feeling of the group?
No, I think it was very specifically E. That she was also a mom and all that stuff. And everything, and was so my older two children are twins, so like we had some bonding over just her being a multiple and me having twins and all that, but just having little kids and all that stuff, like I definitely felt like I bonded with her more than the other two.
I also felt closest to E. I think just simply because it was her box that initially drew me to the group, and she was the first of the three that I was Facebook friends with, chatted with a bit, things like that. I remember you had brought up Alicia and the Gryffindor house and her leaving, and I remember E asking if I could take over, which that was not something I wanted to do, but like I did feel closest to E. Maybe along the way it might have changed to the sister who's not involved as much, just because she was a lot of fun during like the house cups and stuff, but definitely initially E. So her betrayal felt the worst. And I felt like she was the one who was in everybody's like, oh, I'm so sorry for these things going on with you. And so the way that she preyed on people just seemed really bad. M had the whole waffles instead of raffles. That was something, but I don't know. Just what E did seemed the most betrayal like, and partly because I felt closest to her, of the three.
Yeah. And that, when I've talked to a few people, that's a very common response. Like that maybe one drew you in and maybe you branch out to another. I didn't ever really talk to M very much. Like when the influencer stuff started, then I did talk to her a little bit more, but it was very rare because I never got her box or anything like that. And then the sister is not as involved. We talked a little bit, but not a whole lot. Even though I liked her energy a little bit, she seemed like the more bubbly of the three. She seemed the one that had that kind of personality that if I'd met her in person, I would be kind of drawn to want to hang out with her. Especially her husband loving goats and things like that.
That was
like
so fun.
I was just
Sending
thinking
those
about that.
portrait texts.
yeah. And I love goats, so it was just like, yeah, no, she seems like really fun for those kinds of things. But I think definitely for me it was E as well, because that's the box I got, and that's who honestly would message me all the time. The messages going back years and years and years, versus the other two I didn't really speak a whole lot to.
Yeah, mine was M for the most part. I did with E here and there, but and I had a lot more of E's products than I did M's, but M was, and I think it was mostly because I think that E had a wider, let's say, reach almost, and M didn't. And so I think it was a little easier for me to get sucked in on the M portion. And then she was talking a bit more on the mental health end of things, and at the time I was going through a lot of that as well, so it was kind of one of those things where you kind of felt like, oh no, what's going on. I could talk to, like, this is okay. Like, we didn't really talk in depth, but I was definitely more involved with them. And yeah, looking back now, it definitely feels very malicious, everything that they did. And it at the time, on some level, you wanted to excuse it and say that, well, they're going, you wanted to excuse it. But now when you look back, you're like, no, this was just malicious and this was calculated. Yeah.
So another question that it kind of popped in my head is, when do you feel that it become like gone from group dynamic, just a normal group dynamic, to in sort of like this grooming the friendships to be something more, to where we defended them in a lot of scenarios for a long time? Like, do you feel like there was a certain moment? Do you feel like it was gradual? What do you think kind of was the steps that happened with that from your observation?
I think I saw like the biggest change when everything went down, and I might get some of these details fuzzy, but I think it was kind of after a House Cup, and a couple of people really got vilified from like the Slytherin group, and seeing how the group dynamic kind of changed and that mob mentality happened. Like, I was pretty removed from a lot of it, but even I got caught up a little bit in it. But that's when like the whole tone of the group really, really changed for me. I still didn't see the scamming and I didn't see what they were doing, but it definitely gave me a little pause and I was like, whoa, what just happened?
I agree. Yeah, after that second House Cup, when all of that drama went down with people getting booted, and it kind of soured things. But I also think that there was a start to it with the transition to the makeup versus just their own individual boxes. They kind of seen, oh, people, these girls are really into our boxes. And then they had this makeup idea. And then instead of being as focused on fandoms just in general, it was a lot about this makeup. How can we use these girls to help sell our makeup, to buy our makeup, to get our product out there? And I think it kind of started to turn what the group was about, where it was more about, hey, we're, this family of nerdy people who love, to talk about these things and, support each other, to being more focused on their business, even though we did, get their individual boxes and things like that. I think when it was that combined makeup, it started their gears almost turning like, well, how can we use this fan base? They were essentially celebrities. They made themselves celebrities. People talked about collecting them like Pokemon, like, oh, I'm friends with all three of them. I literally remember people making that comparison to Pokemon. And I think when they started that makeup business, their gears started turning and using us. I think that was kind of, in hindsight, looking back, really a big turning point there.
Yeah, I would agree with both of those points. I think the Triwizard Cup stuff, I think people got really cutthroat. And I know that there was a lot of accusations of like cheating at some point and just all these different things, and people just got it went from being fun to vicious and very just I I don't even remember like every detail. I remember being like kind of just peeved off by the whole thing because I was like, oh, last year was so much fun. There are some great memories from some of these things. Like the up your butt thing will forever be one of my favorite moments of my
Yes.
internet time. And like we'll explain that in a different episode. That's a whole other story. But that it's still one of my favorite moments. But then I think anytime you have competition, some people are just way too competitive. But you could also look at it as a moment of then they learned something about us that they could use for the future, like how we are going to handle these situations, which I also would think the Alicia situation was kind of combined into that. And I definitely agree with making us a commodity when it came to the makeup. Like they had a lot of people buying these boxes. So I'm like, it's not like you didn't have tons and tons of people. And honestly, your makeup was in Ulta and stuff. I don't know why you needed to turn us into that. But I think the only thing I can come up with is they were just such bad business people and they didn't understand how these things worked and they didn't ask for help from someone who knows business, because I'm a big believer in a business needs a creative and a technical person in charge. I've got a good friend, he and his business partner, he's like the more businessy guy and his partner's more the creative, and they're so successful he's probably going to retire early. So like you need that balance, but they didn't have that. I need to pay taxes. I need to maybe not embezzle the money, maybe actually put that back into the business, like maybe I need to hire a CPA just to tell me what I need to do. But instead, they relied on us to pay their bills and do all these things for them. Like I remember when Mandy started asking people to be influencers, I think E actually got really upset about it, as did the other sister, because they were like, we agreed we weren't going to do that. And then suddenly you're doing that. And
Well,
she
I
had,
actually got caught up in that and
oh,
wound up in
go
a
for
group
it.
message.
Okay.
Yeah, M messaged me, asked me if I wanted to be a influencer, and I said yes, and blah blah blah. And I sent like you had to pay for the initial product or
Mhm.
whatever, and then you were gonna get I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like this deal where you paid a thing and then you were going to get a whole bunch of stuff after and kind of first access to stuff. And then I think a couple of days after I sent the money, I got a message from E going like, "Hey, did you talk to M about this?" And then at the same time, I got a message from M going, "Hey, E says we can't do this, so I'm going to send you back your money." And I'm like, "Okay, sure." And then it wound up in a group message, and like they were fighting in front of me, and I was sitting there like, "Oh, moms are fighting. Like, what is happening?" And then they decided that I could do it because I think so. What they were saying was they agreed on 10 people, and I was going to be like number 11. And M was going like, "It's not a big deal. Like, she buys all the stuff." Because like at that point, I had everything that they had put out so far, and all that, all the subscriptions and all that stuff. And so they decide. So I actually got sent my money back, and then they decided that I could do it. So like that was also like one of the craziest things, was realizing like that I did actually at one point get my money back. But then they decided I could do it, so I sent the money back again. And I did get stuff for that. But it was so like wild because I was sitting there going like, what, you guys are not on the same page at all. And I was kind of sitting there going like, this is why you don't go into business with family, because y'all are, y'all can't agree on everything. But it was wild because I remember texting or sending a screenshot of the message to one of the other girls who was kind of a little bit more involved in their business and stuff. Um and going like, what is going on? And she was just like, I don't know.
It's absolutely insane to me because I've also heard that they asked so many people to be influencers that it was a huge problem. Because I don't know the true number. I never heard that, but like I think I can't remember if it was a conversation with E or someone else, but I was talking to someone and they said they asked way too many people. Like it was fine, like 10 I could see, sure.
Mhm.
But if you ask like 100 people, and you pay, I think it was like $100 or something you had to pay. And then you were going to get free of the mini palettes. It was all
Yeah.
the little mini book palettes. And you were going to get a bunch of those for free. And they were like, financially that makes 0 sense because then you've paid $100 for, let's say, 10 pallets. It's only $10 a pallet, and those definitely cost more than $10 to produce and everything because you're a small business. It's not like Estee Lauder where they can do that. And so I remember that was a big discussion, and I think we only ended up getting like 2 pallets out of that because then it shut down not long after.
Yeah,
And
something like
so
that.
we paid $50 for like 2 pallets. And they're tiny. They're only like 3 colors and a lip. So it wasn't like a full on box of color or anything. It was, these little things that I don't even know how many of those they
The
actually sold.
craziest thing to me about all of this, like thinking back on it, I don't wear colorful makeup. I wear a red lip and black eyeliner and mascara, and that's it. And I don't know what possessed me.
Child salad.
Like, I have been doing my makeup the same way since I was a teenager. And I was like, I had all these colors of all this eyeshadow that I never wore. I wound up turning it into watercolor.
Oh, that's I like
Nice.
that.
Selling it at an art vendor market a couple of years ago.
I kind of love that.
Amazing.
Hey, you
Breaking
upcycled.
breaking the breaking the eyeshadow was very satisfying.
Yeah, I bet.
I actually bought a bunch of it and gave it away as gifts because they would give me such discounts. And I have a lot of sisters, so I would be like, "Hey, I'm going to send you like 8 pallets of eyeshadow. Here you go." And one of my sisters, she just came into town last weekend, and they had listened to the podcast, and or like we were talking about it. She's like, "I think I still actually have some of those palettes." And I'm like, "Seriously?" She said, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're like in a drawer somewhere, like just hanging out." But I love playing with eyeshadow, but I don't wear any to work 90% of the time because I work with kids and I still have to mask. So I don't wear makeup most of the time to work because I'm just gonna have a mask on all day and it's just going to rub off into the mask. So I really only wear makeup on the weekends anymore, and I have for years. So I have palettes people have bought me. I still have a bunch of theirs just like stacked in there that I'm like, some of these have just never been touched,
Yeah.
never been touched. And they're just hanging out in there. And I'm like, why did I buy a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory palette? When am I going to wear that?
Because you were
Like,
influenced.
yeah, like or like the Van Gogh. Now I love Van Gogh. Starry Night is like my favorite painting. But when am I going to wear blue eyeshadow? Like, it's not the 80s unless I'm just messing around one Friday night because I'm bored out of my mind. Like I don't do a lot of that anymore. And when I do, I often just do like a Fenty cream stick and call it a day, like throw that on there, put a little eyeliner on, and be like, all right, we're good, for my going out stuff. I just don't get into the whole taking 45 minutes to do my eyes anymore. Like my makeup today took me literally 10 minutes. It's like throw it on. And why do I have their palette still? And I think part of it is it kind of just reminds me of don't do this again. Like don't be an idiot.
I think
Because
one of the worst bits is exactly
yeah.
that, is that you ended up with all this stuff and you were just kind of like, but why? And
Yeah.
I think that if we even like take a step back further, I think that if the business sense had been there, they had us giving them ideas of stuff. I remember a post and specifically asking us, like, what would you like to see from a fandom in makeup form? And there were hundreds of comments of people like, oh, this and this and this and this would be cool. And like, I think that had the business sense been there, they would have not only had the investors, because we already put all this money in there in the first place, they would have also had support for years, and this business could have been bigger and better than it was. And I think that being on the ground floor of that is something that's not only really cool, but I think it's even more disappointing because it was a market that hadn't really been broken into correctly. And yet again, another failed attempt. And it's really disappointing to see all of that in piles now in your makeup room going, what do I now do with this? Because I
Yep.
can't look at it. I can't touch it. I mean, I got to give props to Casey because that's incredible. Like,
Yeah.
but I mean, I've got it in boxes in somewhere in the house, and it just sits there, and you
Get
can't
a
really touch
little
it.
gum Arabic and just mush it up until it's the right consistency. Make paint.
Perfect. Yeah, there we go. So there we go. Anybody who's listening, if you want ideas on how to get rid of this, talk to Casey.
Yeah. It's just mix it together. Hey, I'm all about upcycling. I think it's one of the greatest things you can do. Like when people make blankets out of old t-shirts and like they're using the thing that's just been sitting in a drawer for years and years. Kind of another question. What is something you miss the most about the group, that you miss vibe wise?
I miss just being able to go to this one space every day if I needed to. And whether I was taking part in a conversation or just viewing the different things that were going on in the group, like it just felt like this little space that was mine. And I miss having that space now. I hate that it all got destroyed because it really was, when it was great, it was really great. We all had a great time there, and I just miss having that space.
Yeah, I definitely miss the central location of it and being able to go to one place to keep up with all my internet besties. And even, I still have maintained a lot of my relationships, but like this drove some of those people off of social media.
Mhm.
And there are some people that like, I with some changes that happened in my life and moving and all that stuff, like I got a new phone and now I lost that person's number or whatever the case was. And so now I've lost touch with some people and stuff like that because we're not all in this one space anymore. And even when we diverged off into like the smaller subgroups and stuff like that, like they were still active enough and there was still activity in the main group that you could really keep up with everybody. And there were some people that I felt like I lived vicariously through and stuff like that, that like maybe we didn't interact as much, but like I miss keeping up with some people as well.
Yeah. It makes it a lot harder with how we kind of spread out. Like you said, so many people left social media, or a lot of people just had to unfriend a lot of us just because the memory was too hard, and I get that. I get it entirely because it was such a horrible breakup. I had to block certain people by the end because people started getting so vicious and cruel about things. And it was just one of those moments where I'm like, I need to back off. And I kept the people that I'm like, I know I can keep talking to you, like I'm friends with all three of you, and recently I even got to finally meet Christina in person, like the ones that I felt like I can still jive with. And I told her when she came that it felt like she'd always been around because we've known each other so long. So it was like the most natural for her thing for her just to kind of like be here, and I'm meeting several people over the next year because I'm going to a couple weddings and things. But those friendships are sometimes harder to maintain because you don't have that central location. And all of us know as, older millennial women that it's hard to have time for friends and making friends and putting in the effort. And I feel bad when I don't message someone or I'm not checking in on them. But we don't have that central location really anymore. And you have to message like 100 individual people versus just like, hey, everybody, how's everybody doing? People can kind of comment, you can comment back, and you checked in for the day or the week or whatever. And now, especially a lot of us are going through still a lot of things. A lot of people are still dealing with illnesses and divorces and kids and just so many things in the world that are hard, and you don't have that place anymore. And I've said, if it wasn't for the handful of people still on Facebook that I talk to and my little side business stuff that I have on there, I would probably have gotten rid of Facebook like a couple of years ago, because I just don't feel like there's a lot of that. I still struggle even joining groups. I will lurk in a group for like a solid 6 months before I really even comment or get involved, because I'm so scared. Like, the PTSD is so real. I've like joined a couple groups and had to leave the moment I saw signs of anything kind of similar, where I'm like, bye. I can't do it. And I've talked to several people, like former TFP people, and they've said the same thing, that they're just like, I can't do groups the same way anymore. It just
I
doesn't
personally
work.
don't. I mean, I'm only really on social media for this.
Yeah.
I have left several times because it's not fun and it's hard. And when you get into those groups, you look at them and you're like, there is a dark underbelly here, even though there's probably not. I'm like, I don't trust this. And it's devastating. There is one individual that I am still very good friends with from TFP, and she is not. She only uses, I think, Messenger now. Like, she doesn't use any other social media because of the bullying that she experienced through the group and stuff like that. And it is devastating because on a personal level, she is so kind and so lovely. And she is one of the sweetest people I've ever known. And yet, because of that, she shut herself entirely off. And it's devastating. And to know that the effect of what happened caused such devastating effect to some people. I mean, even if the effect wasn't massive, it was still really extremely hurtful, and it
Mhm.
causes, I think, all of us to kind of sit back and now and go and question a lot more things that come across.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the bullying, we haven't even really gotten deep into how the bullying really got going. If either of you had experience with that, please feel free to share. But um, it got, towards the end, it got really bad. Really, really bad.
I
Uh,
thankfully like never experienced it, never was on the receiving end of it. But definitely saw it. There were definitely a couple of times where I'm going to say I had some thoughts about some things, the way that people were acting, and I just I kind of growing up on the internet, or growing up in the era of internet where we were warned. um you know Basically whatever is on there forever. Like, definitely didn't say things, but watching how people responded and all that stuff definitely gave me a lot of pause for it. And really, I think the first time that I really felt like I witnessed a mob mentality in that way.
mhm.
Yeah, it seemed very Mean Girls, and oh, you have to go block this person right now. And I remember
Mhm.
one of the people was somebody I had met in real life. And I think the way that she um, would say things that if you didn't realize they were a joke, maybe could have come across perhaps
Sure.
as mean. I don't know. And so a lot of people are like, oh, she has to be blocked. I remember this like feeling like I've met her and she's one of the people I met in real life. Should I block or not block? Just because it was such this like, everybody do this, everybody do this. I did not block her, but it really, there was like this, when something went down, this huge mob mentality, and you didn't always know the whole story. Bringing up that Alicia situation, I do wish, like you, that I knew maybe her side of the story more now, because it really felt like she had done something awful. But knowing how things went down in the end with the sisters, I'm like, I don't know. We might not have had that full story.
I actually was sent her contact information after the last episode. I have yet to reach out because I'm still kind of debating how I want to approach it, or even if I should, because I also don't want to like cause any issues for her, especially if she's moved on and everything. I'm still kind of debating it, talking it through with a few people, but I had talked to Alicia almost every day, and when that happened, I was so confused because she's a Kentucky girl. We liked bourbon. She lived near where my sister had moved to. So, like, she was someone I talked to all the time. And I had a little group chat with her and a couple other people, other bourbon aficionados. And we would talk. And, when all that went down and some of the stuff they accused her of, I was like, really? I mean, I guess it's probably, I mean, I don't know why they would make that up. Like you go through that in your head. And this was still like kind of early enough in the group, really, that there weren't a lot of other signs. And in my research on cults, I realized a lot of times cults, the first people to go are the truest believers, because if they can go, we all can go, and it scares everybody into acting right. And of course, since she was like actually worked for them and was a part of their businesses, like hindsight being 2020, I'm like, I wonder if that was a calling of the believers, like of someone, because several people left with her after
Yeah.
that. There was a pretty decent exodus at that point, not like a ton, but enough where it was felt. And I still go back to, was that the first real time? Because then after that, it felt like the bullying slowly started happening, just these little moments. And I believe I shared it in the last episode about, like, someone had paid for the retainer for my divorce, and I went to Universal with my family that my brother paid the ticket for, but apparently I was not allowed to do anything ever again because someone paid for the retainer, even though that trip had been paid for prior to COVID, but because of COVID got delayed and they let us just like move things. Um, but I was literally like, I had never gotten to meet this brother of mine before, and I'm in the car with my brother I've never met, and people are sending me hate messages that I was not allowed to have gone to Universal and stuff, because I had posted the pictures and I didn't look at Facebook again until like the next day, and I woke up to hell on earth, and my brother was like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, so I'm basically being bullied for going to Universal, the day before. And I was just like, we're adults. You're not
The
allowed to
other
tell people
thing
what
was
to do.
explaining the group to people, like
Oh my
in
God,
it.
yeah.
Oh my God. My husband calls it book club. He still now assumes everything that I do on the internet is book club.
Yeah. It
And
was
I love it.
he didn't know what else to call it. I was like, I don't sure. Sure. It's not at all that, but sure.
Sure, why not?
Sure.
Yeah.
Crazy book club cult.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
he's so funny. But it's like my ex knows all about this too, and he's just because we were together pretty much the entire time this happened, because the divorce happened like right at the devolving end. And he's just like, some of the stuff that you all were doing in that group seemed really weird to me, but I just never said anything. And I'm like, again, hindsight's really 2020, and I'm just like, why was I stacking books at like 3 in the morning for this? Making a huge mess in the living room that he wakes up to and just looks around and he's like, okay. So, like, just gonna go to work. It's fine. I'll clean it up. But, these little things and of course it was fun, but I think sometimes, you hear about the Hollywood shaming stuff that they make you do. Like, you have to do something embarrassing when you join Hollywood, as a sort of a hazing ritual. And not to say that's what the Tri-Wizard Cup was, but in some ways, some of these things that we did made it so we were bonded in that way. Like, the more ridiculous and embarrassing you can be with each other, the more you're gonna trust that person and listen to those people. Because, I got to be really myself in front of you. Here you go, and you kind of give that to them on a little silver platter. Of course, they never asked us to do anything illegal at that point. Like, none of it was like, we weren't like in the Nexium cult
Right.
No, it would
with
take
weird.
2 a.m. Like,
Yeah, it's like stacking books is a very far cry from like sexual slavery. Okay, let's
yeah,
like, we're just clearing the air on that. But it's still that same concept of, I can get you to do this, you'll do these other things for me, or you'll defend me because I've seen the real you or the embarrassing you. Um, Kind of another, sort of our real last question is, what made you come on the podcast? Like, what do you hope this accomplishes? What do you hope people can get out of, listening to our story?
I think just sort of like how easy it can be to just like maybe trust the wrong people, and beware of anything where money starts getting involved as well. Even if it starts out perfectly legitimate and fine, just have your guard up, because you just never know. And just so many people were hurt by this. And even though, we know that nothing's going to come of any reparations or anything like that from the sisters, just at least that maybe they can see that, yeah, we haven't forgotten, and, we're here to support each other and things like that. Because it just seemed like a lot of us tried for a long time, especially the people who were out thousands and thousands of dollars. And I feel really horrible for people like that, to get their money back. And that isn't going to happen. But maybe if other people can be aware of maybe what to look out for, or, things like that.
I think part of it for me is definitely a lot of what Lindsay said. Definitely that people should be cautious about, I'm going to say like small internet businesses and things like that. Um, but I think like another piece of it for me is when I agreed, or when I signed up to do this, was also around the time that we were starting to see pop up in other buy sell trade things. So part of it was also definitely I'm not shutting up. Like, I know I've come to terms with that. I'm not getting my money back, but I'm also not gonna shut up and let you continue to do this. But also, you didn't break the bonds that we have in the friendships and all of that stuff. Like, there are people who I'm still close with who have gotten me through incredibly difficult times in my life, people I still talk to every day. And just because you broke the community doesn't mean that, like, we're not still there.
Yeah.
yeah. And I
Oh,
think, if you're
good.
listening, want to reach out, please do. We'd love to hear your side of the story about all of this. Because I would agree with what everybody else has said. There's 3 sides to every story, and we only got one. But we also respect your boundaries. If that is not something that you ever want to touch on again, that is 1,000% your prerogative. There is no pressure. Just know that
Yeah.
you will be welcomed wholly and kindly if that is your choice.
Yeah, we're not here to judge what anyone did in these situations because of just how bad it got. And, like, dealing with narcissists, a lot of times you do respond in ways that normally you never would. I read a story the other day where this man had gambled away his family's life savings, like all of it, and his wife had just had a new baby. And she slapped him when she found out, because he lied to her, and she slapped him. And all these people in the comments are like, well, she shouldn't hit him. And I'm like, I'm not saying the hitting was right. But if you just found out you have a new baby and your husband's been lying and gambled, I can't remember the amount, but it was something like $50,000 or $60,000 when you have a baby, especially in this economy. He's lucky that there wasn't some other snapped episode situations going on, because that is a narcissistic thing, to go and gamble this money because it's probably not the first time. And this woman responded emotionally, and yeah, she probably shouldn't have hit him, but at the same time, the response was because of something so significant, something so damaging and hurtful, that we humans are designed to either fight, flight, or, freeze pretty much. And sometimes you just react. So, if you want to tell your story, there's zero judgment from any of us here on how you responded, because in that situation, it's hard to know how you would actually respond to some of that, because she was being bashed to a group of almost 2,000 people. That's pretty hard and embarrassing. Um, well, is there anything else anyone would like to say before we wrap up today's episode? Okay.
I feel like we
Well,
touched on most everything, but the good times were great. And
yeah.
and I'm so thankful for all the people that I have met in the group, both in real life and still just whether it's on the internet. Like, they've become real friends, and I will always love that came from this experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, just like that at the end of the day, you touched on it a little bit before, but like making friends as an adult is hard. And some of the friends that I made through this group, got me through a move that took me 1,500 miles away from any family. And I still talk and see these people. And people who got me through some really, really difficult times in my life when my twins were in the NICU and when we thought that my son wasn't going to make it. Like, there were some really specific people who are, I think, the reason I survived all of that. And I am ultimately thankful for that.
Mhm. Well, thank you both so much for coming on and for volunteering to participate and sharing all these stories. And I know that several people signed up to do multiple episodes. So if you did that, then we will probably see you again coming up soon. Since now we know how we're going to record and sort of a little bit more of a decent schedule on kind of getting through all that. So we want to thank everybody for listening. Please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Our link trees and all of our socials. If you have further information to share with us or a similar story, maybe not necessarily with this group, but something that is akin to it, please feel free to reach out to us, because we would love to branch out into other similar stories to show just exactly how this works. So thank you so much again, and we will see you all soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions or a story of your own about this organization, please feel free to email us. Our email will be linked in the description box. If you have experienced any trauma or abuse, please dial 988 for the crisis hotline. You are not alone. Please join us with our next episode, where we will be continuing to discuss what took place and how people are feeling about it today.